and welcome to World Insight on CGTN. I'm Tian Wei. We start in New Zealand, where a virtual gathering of APEC economy leaders, CEOs and entrepreneurs, business and thought leaders is ongoing. New Zealand is hosting the APEC Leaders Week entirely online due to COVID prevention. Topping the agenda are pandemic control, economic recovery, climate change, and sustainable development.
Supporting Indigenous populations is a key theme of APEC 2021, and China's president says APEC economies need to be forward-looking and reject practices of discrimination and exclusion.
Attempts to draw ideological lines or form small circles on geopolitical grounds are bound to fail. The Asia-Pacific region cannot and should not relapse into the confrontation and division of the Cold War era.
New Zealand's Prime Minister also believes that the Asia-Pacific region can build back better and emerge from the COVID pandemic stronger and more resilient than ever.
Now, every crisis does present an opportunity, and the 21 APEC economies have been dealt a heavy burden, but also an opportunity to strike an economic reset on a scale we haven't seen since World War II.
Ardern says that APEC has also shown a determination to work together and to reject protectionism. APEC fully supports moves toward a more digital economy, especially when it comes to cross-border customs procedures. But one of the biggest issues at this online summit is climate change, and China has pledged to lead the world in becoming carbon neutral.
China will strike a balance between low-carbon transition and ensuring the living needs of its people, and between development and carbon reduction, and will achieve carbon peak and carbon neutrality within the time frame we set.
As the host of APEC 2021, New Zealand also says that governments must send the right signals to businesses and consumers to discourage the inefficient use of fossil fuels. And APEC leaders will meet again virtually at their leaders' retreat this weekend.
For the latest on APEC, I'm joined in Tokyo Lin Tenwai, Adjunctive Senior Research Fellow from the East Asian Institute at National University of Singapore. In Beijing, Xu Sitao, Chief Economist from Deloitte, China. Gentlemen, what a pleasure to see both of you. China, Japan, and South Korea, the three countries, may have difficulties on some of the geopolitical issues, but when it comes to RCEP, these three countries are sitting together with ASEAN economies and do the best. So it seems that it could really be a rallying force. Another thing is about the climate issue. Of course, the Glasgow meeting is still going on as we speak. At this point, though, China and the US already putting out a joint declaration on working together in the 2020s era on the climate change and implementing the Paris Agreement. So the two biggest economies of APEC are already, coming to a certain consensus. So Mr. Xu, consensus like this, what does that mean for APEC, its synergy?
A reset of US-China relationship to the positive side, that will be a good news for APEC, because most countries in APEC, they don't want to choose side. They want some sort of balance, whether economically or militarily, but they don't want to choose side. That is for sure. So this is a good news for APEC. Secondly, related to the issue of trade. In past few years, we have all witnessed this trade tension between China and the United States. I think the Glasgow meeting is another piece of evidence suggesting at least the trade war between China and the United States is likely to be not over, but I think the tariffs will come down eventually. So that's another good news. If US and China can work together on climate change, I think they can work together in other areas.
If you look at the numbers of PPI in China, same with the US's CPI, the number is the highest since the 1990s, which means the disruption of global supply chains and trade will do nobody good. Of course, there's the issue of energy supply and raw materials as well. But you know, some of the earlier evidence over the past 2 years seem to already show people what kind of road we need to choose. Otherwise, it's not likely to result.
Trade shows that there is interdependence between countries, and the joint declaration was indeed a very symbolic of this interdependence. In fact, there is some optimistic commentators and analysis are saying that the two superpowers are finding grounds in which they can cooperate. One would be the climate change, which appears to be a universally sort of accepted point of view that the two countries are collaborating, not because of the fact that there is a rivalry going on, but because the planet's health is at stake and there is much to be done. Of course, there are other issues which appears to have some elements of commonalities. For example, the Korean Peninsula denuclearization and also cooperation on ending the pandemic as it slowly evolves into an endemic. So the climate change declaration is indeed the sort of at the tipping point in which the superpowers can find ways to collaborate, in which it is universally welcome by all countries in the world. Hopefully, this will sort of be the start of the road in which the planet's health can be healed and the world can come together at the end of the pandemic.
We are having more capabilities, gentlemen, than we used to at any time to deal with the pandemic, both with the vaccines, extra shots, and also with the special treatment pills with the latest news. However, it is not over. It is still developing. Some countries' numbers are still skyrocketing. So what would that mean for the Asia Pacific region, a region that some of the economies don't even have much access to vaccines? Mr. Lim.
The second stage of the impact of the pandemic is now coming in. Economies are affected, livelihoods are affected. So there's a need for APEC countries to talk about how to open up safely, establish VTL lanes, establish vaccinated lanes in air travel, as well as sea travel. So a lot of APEC countries are already discussing that, and also how to co-recognize the vaccine that has already been dispensed, either through vaccine passport or some kind of documentation that is equitable for all. The most important thing is not to adopt a beggar thy neighbor policy, but to have vaccine multilateralism and to have transportation and logistics multilateralism. Fortunately, APEC countries show the way and has shown the world that it is willing to move forward.
The different capacity, not just vaccine and also public health management, government's abilities to dish out fiscal relief. And we have seen numerous examples in past 2 years. So the economic recovery, which is likely to take shape next year, will be uneven. It will be, there will be a dispersion in terms of growth trajectory. And some economies will, for example, Singapore, are likely to outperform. Some economies in APEC region could be laggards. But having said that, I do hope APEC countries could set example by creating travel bubbles among cities which have demonstrated a track record in containing COVID effectively past 2 years. I do hope that would happen next year.
We'll see how the pandemic will go and how APEC economies are prepared to do that. Thank you so much for now. Lin Tianwai, Xu Zitao, really appreciate it. Thank you.